Hi, welcome to Classics You Slept Through. This is the podcast where we read classic books, we read them out loud to you, and then we talk about them. I'm your host, Kyle Davis, along with a woman who, while vivisection seems interesting, has never just had the time to kind of get into it. My sister, Meredith. How's it going tonight, Mer?
Hey, just the time was the issue. I can't even believe I didn't get it during COVID. I should have.
You know, during the last global pandemic, Dr. Moreau vivisected 12 animals. What did you accomplish? So we are talking about our friend, Dr. Moreau. It's The Island of Dr. Moreau by H.G. Wells. Today we're covering the second half of the book, chapters 14 through 22. To this point, we've met our narrator, hero, protagonist of the story, Mr. Edward Prendick, who has been shipwrecked, adrift at sea, picked up by a drunken captain, meets our friend Montgomery, ends up on the titular island of Dr. Moreau, in whom Montgomery is employed. And there's a lot of stuff going on, and Prendick is kind of getting some hints here and there. It's kind of sketchy. There's these guys on the island with Montgomery and Moreau. Look kind of weird. Prendick can't quite put his finger on it. He's skeeved out. And now we're going to find out exactly what's going on.
Last we were with Prendick, he had just walked into the ocean, having discovered the horribleness of the island, thinking that Moreau is vivisecting humans. And he thinks he's next. So he walks into the ocean, supposedly to kill himself, met with very logical reasons why he shouldn't and why they're not going to vivisect him. And now Dr. Moreau explains is our next section. So what does he explain?
It is our next section. And I just, as my first note, I was absolutely tickled how this one kicks off. Because chapter 14, Dr. Moreau explains, and now Prendick, I will explain, said Dr. Moreau. So that was just, I know, that one was a treat to read, personally. I really enjoyed that.
Way to go, H.G. Wells.
Yes. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you, then I'm going to tell you what I tell you. Good briefing technique.
Yeah. And so he does explain that they aren't humans and never were.
He does. So this entire time, Prendick has been very concerned that Moreau has been experimenting on humans, which, given the fact that there was only animals brought in on the boat, and he's only seen 2 actual humans, I guess he's not quite sure about Maling yet. I'm kind of worried about Prendick's powers of deduction here.
Well, that's why he was so easily convinced not to kill himself. He's like,
this is true.
They did say, wouldn't we have brought back people? Wouldn't we have trafficked people and not just the animals that you saw on the boat? And he's like, I don't know.
And wouldn't we have already done something to you while you were sleeping all these times?
We drugged you yesterday and you're fine.
Exactly. So this is a very, very long chapter where Moreau, it's basically Moreau soliloquizing? A soliloquy by Moreau?
Yeah.
He delves into some various things. Before we were talking about the nature of pain. Mm-hmm. That's kind of one of the things he really dives in on.
Yeah. He thinks, and rightfully so, Prendick is appalled at all of the sounds of pain that he has heard coming from the puma. So when he saw the puma, he thought it was a person because it had been stripped of its flesh and it was pink and it was, I guess, going to be walking upright. And he just thought, like, oh, that's a person. And it wasn't the puma. But
even though he knew the puma was in the enclosure and he'd seen the puma on the ship and et cetera, et cetera. Anyway.
He's been lost at sea, drank too much seawater.
This is true. He's very traumatic.
But Moreau tries to logic him into not caring about pain because Moreau himself no longer cares about pain.
Right. He stabs himself in the thigh with a penknife to show him, hey, this doesn't hurt at all. And he sort of equates pain to a base natural instinct that I suppose we will eventually evolve ourselves beyond. Like we no longer, pain was serving a purpose to motivate us to do things or to move us away from danger. But now that we are highly enlightened men, we can logically see what danger is, and we don't need pain to motivate us away from danger, and therefore pain is now superfluous in our existence.
We've scienced our way out of feeling pain, or at least he thinks we're going to. I wonder if he has like one of those motivational posters in his lab that says like, pain is weakness leaving the body. Someone on a mountaintop.
He definitely, I think if Moreau was around nowadays, rather than vivisection, I think he would be like a Tony Robbins motivational speaker or something.
Well,
make his living that way.
He's never been troubled by the ethics of the matter. He's remorseless, he says.
Well, ethically speaking, dear Prendick, very quickly, once he becomes convinced that these are animals that Moreau's working on, he very quickly goes from, this is horrendously unethical, Moreau, to, oh, they're just animals? Okay, well, that's cool. It's a very quick turn for Prendick.
He does it. He wavers back and forth later on in the book. But again, he always turns back to, they are animals, and never were humans.
Despite the fact that the very last thing he says in chapter 13, just prior, was, I've never seen an animal think. So he's already established these are thinking beasts, and he's immediately fine with, oh, well, it used to be a puma? Okay, whatever.
Yeah, that's fine. So Moreau explains, Prendick mostly accepts. Montgomery, we know, accepted a long time ago, because Montgomery alludes to, it took me a while to get used to it, but now that they've been together 11 years doing this stuff, I'm
kind of fine with it now.
Yeah, and he reassures, I guess that's what you could call it. He reassures Prendick that he too will likely become accustomed to what's going on. And he really does it eventually.
Eventually, yeah. The other note I had for this chapter, and I kind of found it interesting. So this was written, around the turn of the century. I forget what the exact publication date on this one was. I don't have it in front of me.
I think it was like 1896 or 95. Because we talked about Frankenstein and this book were published like 1 year apart or something.
Right. So one of the things that that Moreau discusses during his explanation to Prendick is in his detailed description of vivisection and what he's doing, where basically he is, equating it to skin grafts. We're going to graft these parts onto the animal, and then we'll heal it, and eventually the flesh will grow, and they'll grow together. He also, in the education side of the animal, is talking about hypnosis and how these great strides in the science of hypnosis. A contemporary of this book was, I read a while back, The Lair of the White Worm by Bram Stoker. Oh. And which, terrible, do not recommend. He was a one-hit wonder.
It's no Dracula.
No, it's no Dracula. He tried to follow it up with something, and it was weird. But anyway, hypnosis played a gigantic part of that book. The characters basically have they're staring contests, these hypnotic battles back and forth. And in reading that book, I kind of learned that around this time in the late 1800s, early 1900s, hypnosis was like this fad craze around the world. And it was like this amazing new thing they thought that was going to change the world. And I can't remember off the top of my head, I should have looked this up, but there's a Frenchman who kind of was pushing this. Why don't you go on to 15 and I'll look it up and get my point.
So like the people of the time reading this in contemporary times for them would have been like, hypnotize a beast creature into thinking and speaking, and because that's basically what Moreau did partially, was that he excised the brain and then helped. That's how they can talk, some of them, right?
Right. And to the people reading this book, nowadays we look at hypnosis as kind of it's a parlor trick. It's something the magician does up on stage. There's no scientific basis for it. But at this time, it would have been like this new, exciting field of scientific study. So the possibilities would have been amazing.
Yeah. Well, then so Moreau explains, we go to chapter 15.
Mesmer. So Dr. Mesmer.
Yes,
so,
mesmerize.
Yes.
There you go.
Yes. So the word mesmerize, which I didn't know the etymology of, it comes from this guy in France, this French doctor, Dr. Mesmer, who was a proponent and was pushing hypnosis. I just thought it was interesting that this word that I never really gave it two thoughts, but it actually came from someone's name.
Yeah.
But anyway.
So he's vivisecting them and then mesmerizing them, literally.
And mesmerizing. Exactly.
Well, then the next chapter 15, is concerning the beast folk. Puma's resting to heal that day. Thank goodness.
Yes.
And Prendick has to grapple with and battle with everything that he's learned, and now he's a part of all of this. And we know he's going to be here for a while. He says it's impossible for him to describe the beast people in detail. My eye had no training in details. So,
and he could not sketch.
It's kind of like a nice out for H.G. Wells. Like, use your own imagination, folks.
I think this is a good horror trick, right?
Sure.
It's, horror movies are always scarier when it's left to the audience's imagination. Once you're actually shown the creature, it's kind of like, oh, it's a dude in a rubber suit, okay?
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of the same thing here. It's the cast of cats. In your mind, you think, oh, these wonderful cats. Yeah. So I think that it was actually a nice trick of his where it leaves it to the reader to imagine all kinds of horrors and to put themselves in Prendick's shoes.
And he becomes habituated to their forms eventually. He can't tell us how horrible they are, but eventually they just become the regular sights and sounds and people that he sees on the island.
Right.
Probably gets habituated more quickly to it than he had expected.
And he starts to equate them to people he saw back in London, like, oh, that beast over there, that could just be some guy shuffling home after a long shift at the factory or whatever,
Yeah. It's what had been unnatural and repulsive speedily became natural and ordinary, which
right.
I read when I was in high school. I read Camus' The Stranger. Did you ever read Albert Camus' The Stranger? Great work.
I'm going to let you take a guess on whether I've read it or not.
It's really small. It's probably not in public domain yet, but it's really small. But that book was so formative for me. It's very existential, and it hit me at the right time of high school. And basically, the main character says you can get used to anything. As long as...
Which is probably true.
Enough time goes by, you can get used to anything. And
sure. I mean, things that are foreign and strange are scary. And once you're used to them, it's like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah. And I think from the outside looking in, thinking about getting used to these beast people walking around, especially when you have no escape, of course he gets used to them right away. If he had escaped, he would have left.
Well, plus the other humans that he interacts with, they're unfazed.
Yeah.
Moreau and Montgomery don't care. So
yeah,
for him to continue to be freaked out would be unusual.
And they become more and more human to him. They have more and more humanity, and less
human to the point where, in chapter 16, they start making fun of him.
What do they call him? The one who walks into the sea or something like that?
Yeah, the one who walked into the sea. And the third one, now there's a third one with the whip. Why does he not say anything? Do men not speak? He does not speak. Yeah, the satyr and the ape man, they're busting some balls in this chapter.
Was he not made? He said he was made. Well, he did confuse them quite a bit.
He's a 5-man.
Right.
He's a 5-man like me.
And yeah. He's like, yeah, totally, like you. But that's not, they don't take that to mean, he had no idea what they were talking about, but they take it to mean that he was made.
Right.
I love that they don't recognize that he has any authority at all.
Right.
which comes back to bite him later.
Well, yeah. Well, we'll get there. Yeah, but definitely he tries to assert some. I had the only kind of fun, antiquated note that I pulled out of this one was at one point when they're speaking with the Beast Men. I think it's Montgomery that refers to one of them as an Ollendorfian beggar.
Please tell me you know what that is.
I do know what that is. So, Dr. Ollendorf was a German language professor, and he developed a method of teaching which basically boils down to rote repetition. So, in the passage that we're discussing here, where he calls him that, the satyr had just been. He says, "Yesterday he bled and wept. You never bleed nor weep. The master does not bleed nor weep." And he says, "Ollendorfian beggar." So it's the satyr is just repeating himself, does not bleed or weep, does not bleed or weep. And kind of getting on Montgomery's nerves.
And he's referring to Prendick like he's weak, basically. You're not that weak.
Exactly.
Master's not weak.
You're right. Oh,
and though the long thin whip can't convince them. Ollendorfian beggar. I love it.
Yeah. You have to work that one into some talk. Well, towards the end of the chapter, Montgomery and Prendick were in the woods, and they had found. Yes. Is this where they found the torn rabbit or just the ripped trees?
Rabbit with its head twisted off.
Yes. So they are discovering signs that perhaps the beast is reasserting itself within these creatures, and they're starting to break the law.
Yeah. And Prendick mentions, so you mentioned the tree that had been scratched, which they're not supposed to do, the head ripped off. And then also Prendick says, well, I saw also one of them like drinking from the stream, like putting his head into the water. And that's, he's sucking his drink. Lapping would be better, I think.
You gotta love that.
Not to suck your drink is the law.
Do not suck your drink. Whenever I read that, I was reminded of like those, baby shower games where you're trying to drink out of the baby bottle and you can't, basically. Like, I can't suck my drink. So they suspect the leopard man is the one who's transgressing the law. Mm-hmm. So they decide to round up the beast people. They have a big meeting, and they're going to look for him. And he is one of the ones who doesn't immediately show, which then casts just more suspicion upon him.
But Montgomery doesn't go too far into it, but Montgomery believes, he's like, well, how did they must have tasted blood. How did they do this? Why would they do this? They're not supposed to. And he's like, oh, I taught Mei Ling how to skin and cook a rabbit. That might have been a mistake. And then that's pretty much all he says about it.
He was licking his fingers after. Darn. Whoops.
So Moreau comes. He gathers them all together. Like you said, Leopard Man's like the last to show up. And he makes the sayer of the law repeat the laws. And he's like, say the words.
Yes.
And then when they get to don't eat the fish, don't eat flesh or fish, it's the law, he stops them. And he's like, this one has been broken.
And they immediately turn on the leopard man. They're like, this guy, I know. So, like any cornered animal, the leopard man decides to strike.
Right. Because
he says, you know what? Well, I'm not having this.
Because the punishment, Moreau's like, all right, back to the house of pain we go. Let's go. You need adjustments of some sort.
Right.
And he's like, I am not going back there. No. I
appreciate that, Moreau didn't immediately sentence him to death. He was like, you know what? I can fix this. I'm going to train this out of you.
Vivisect it out of you. I'm going to strap you down. I'm going to excise your brain.
What would he do at that point? Wouldn't you think this hypnosis? I
don't know.
What is he going to cut out and grab? I don't know. Anyway.
What Leopard Man doesn't want to find out.
He doesn't. So he decides to take a chance on Moreau. So he attacks him. They chase him down. They eventually corner the leopard man. And Prendick, he kind of takes some pity on him and tries to mercy kill him.
Yeah.
But that doesn't go well either.
He says he sees in his what was his phrase? In his like really animalistic state, hiding and being afraid. Prendick sees his humanity and starts to feel bad for him.
Well, he fears for his life. I think, that he can relate to that.
Yeah.
This guy was cornered and he's scared. He wants to keep living.
But he quickly changes his mind, takes out his revolver, and tries to shoot him between the eyes. So.
Well, like I said, I think that was a mercy killing because as it is, he gets jumped. Maling and one of the other animals, get on his neck and start chowing down. So.
And Moreau's screaming, "Don't kill it! Don't kill it! Don't kill it!"
Right. He wants to fix it. I mean, his creation. It's his child, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Prendick's basically like, "Sorry, not sorry."
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Precisely.
I said, though I was not. And on the chase, the other animals are pumped. They're not supposed to hunt. They're not supposed to, but they are.
They're smelling the blood.
Yeah, they love it. They're like laughing. The wolf man or wolf woman was like laughing in his face.
Right. Just to imagine this scene is just terrifying. But anyway.
And this helps Prendick change his mind again about Moreau. He sees his real cruelty, and he thinks of the beast people as poor brutes. He sees their humanity in a way, and how terrified they are of Moreau.
Yeah, Prendick really is like seesawing back and forth between how he feels about animals and how he feels about whether they're human or not.
Yeah.
Well, that brings us to 17. Chapter 17 is our first time jump, and this is where we realize, so the first 16 chapters are basically a very detailed Prendick's first 2 days on the island. So a lot is happening to him in his first 2 days. Now we jump 7 to 8 weeks into the future. He says, I kind of lost track of time. I don't even know how long I've been here anymore. So I found it interesting that he has been there, about 2 months, and he's basically dead weight on the island. It's not like he's helping Moreau.
Right.
It's not like he's doing anything. He just kind of wakes up and goes out for a smoke, and is like, I'm staying on this island. 2 months he hasn't built a boat. He hasn't said like, hey, I'm gonna take off. He's just sort of doing his thing, letting Montgomery and Maling feed him. He doesn't really like them anymore. He says over that time, he doesn't like the experimentation, nor Moreau or Montgomery any more than when he first got there. So it's just interesting. He's just been kind of chilling for 2 months.
He's a very unwelcome guest, as we know.
He is.
And he's acting like an unwelcome. I mean, what could he do? He can't participate in the vivisections.
I mean, ostensibly he could. He's a man of science.
Wow.
Moreau was excited when he arrived. Like, maybe he could help me out. He'd be more useful than Montgomery.
Well, he doesn't and he isn't. But then something happens. A catastrophe.
A catastrophe. The puma gets loose.
Rips its
busts her
feathers
chains.
right out of the wall.
Right out of the wall. Knocks old Prendick over, breaks his arm, and just rolls.
Good for her.
I was kind of struck that, 2 months into this thing, we're still working on the puma. Like,
that's a good point.
This dude has been jacking this puma up, cutting and grafting and healing for a very long time. She's definitely not happy.
God, that's a good point. I hadn't thought of that. I mean, the time jump is like, whatever, the time jump, but to think that this puma has been fettered to the wall,
right,
as you say, experimented on, healed, and like just the pain over and over and over and over and over again.
And I mean, they have to be feeding it somehow, right? I mean, it can't live for 2 months without food or water, so
Kind of makes me sick. Dad's totally not going to listen to this episode. He's not going to he's not going to do this book. He's not.
I mean, I guess they could have been feeding the puma intravenously this whole time. I don't know. It's just,
yeah.
So the puma gets loose, and now just it's pandemonium. All hell breaks loose on the island. The animals are rising up. Montgomery ends up killing a few of them. They're knocking him over. He shoots some of them. Maling, I think, helps out. It's crazy.
Because they go
Moreau
they try to get the puma
missing.
back, and they can't.
Yeah, they Right. They're trying to get the puma back. That's 2 months of work. Moreau, as we established in the Moreau Explains chapter, he's like, I'm wasting 10 minutes talking to you. I could be working on this puma.
Yeah.
He wants every waking minute to be doing his work.
Moreau takes off after the puma, and they basically go missing. Montgomery doesn't know where.
Right.
Prendick and Montgomery have no idea where Moreau is, where the puma is, and they're not quite sure what to do at the end of this chapter, except drink some more brandy.
Except drink some brandy. Yeah, they are in a precarious situation. Well, 18, we end up finding out what happens to the good doctor.
Happens to be called The Finding of Moreau.
The Finding of Moreau.
I'm surprised the first sentence isn't, when we found Moreau.
Yes, exactly. But eventually they do find Moreau, and he is dead. So, spoiler if you haven't read along with us, Moreau dies.
He's dead, and he and the puma are both dead, seemingly perhaps killing each other in the struggle. But the other beast creatures, they don't know what to think. He's dead, he's not dead, we saw.
And this is a transformative moment on the island.
Huge.
Because the master is dead.
Yeah.
So Prendick, with some quick thinking, tries to restore some order. So he goes, when in doubt, you just go full Jesus on him, right?
He's not dead.
He's not dead. He's watching you right now. He's going to come back. Yeah.
But instead of going to heaven, you go back to the house of pain.
You go to the house of pain. Yeah,
There is no heaven here.
This is Jesus' half-brother from hell. Right. So he steps in. He tries to restore some order, gets them back in line, asserts his dominance and mastery, but still doesn't go so well.
Yeah. They sort of, they're like, oh, okay, they sort of believe him, but they're like, but we saw him. He was pretty dead to us.
He's pretty dead.
What do they do at the end here? They take his body, they burn it, right?
Right. Well, they don't know what to do. They take it back to the enclosure. Prendick is all for burning it, because he's like, we got to get rid of this.
Yeah.
Like, they can't see this because they know now.
Yeah.
So, the sayer, the sayer of the law is dead. So, kind of the one that helps keep them in line. So it's pretty bad right now.
Yeah. And the animals or the beast people are all thinking like, well, what does happen to the law now?
Right. So they go back. They lock in. They throw Moreau's body in the yard, and then they go into the lab and they kill everything that is left.
Yeah.
So any other animals that they were going to experiment on that they had hanging out, they just kill everything. So now you got Prendick and you got Montgomery hanging out in the enclosure. Even Maling went back with the other beast people. So it's just the two of them chilling.
Yeah.
And so as we move into 19, Montgomery does what Montgomery does. And he's like, man, I'm just drinking this up.
It's his bank holiday.
It's my bank holiday. This is, more as in America we would say, a federal holiday. Yeah, he's like, what are we going to do now? This is bad, right?
Dude, can I just say, if Prendick's or if Montgomery says something's a silly ass one more time, oh my God. He literally can't think of, he comes out with Oladorfian brute or whatever, and then the rest of it is silly ass.
Silly ass. Yeah.
Silly ass of a world.
Drink, he says, you logic-chopping, chalky-faced saint of an atheist. Drink.
All right, I take it back. Maybe that was a pretty good one.
That was a pretty good one. Montgomery coming off the top rope there.
Chalky-faced saint of an atheist?
I don't even know what that's supposed to mean. That's fantastic.
Oh my God.
Anyway.
Yeah, so they're drinking and drinking. Well, Montgomery is drinking and drinking. And
right.
They're sort of trying to figure out what to do. Or Prendick's at least like, dude, what should we do? You should probably
Montgomery's
stop
like,
drinking.
I'm going to drink. He's like, yo, Maling, come get some of this.
Yes. He's like, that's the last thing that Moreau didn't think of. You really want to make someone human? You get him to drink with you.
We got to drink. Yep. You're the beast. He takes his liquor like a Christian. Come on.
What does that mean?
So he goes out to find Maling, who has, as we said, had gone off with the beasts. And this doesn't really go so well. So Montgomery goes off on a right bender with Maling and some of the others, and
they're like straight up frat boys, like singing.
They are.
And
They are.
running off.
They're making fun of Prendick,
burning stuff.
Confound old Prendick, they're shouting.
What a loser!
You suck, Prendick.
They're like breaking stuff, and they've gone full frat beast.
He hears them, they go off into the woods, but he hears them come back, and he hears heavy blows and splintering smash of wood. But it didn't really trouble me then. And as you're reading this, you're like, oh no, this is not good. This is not good. So we find out that smashing of the wood was them breaking up the boats. So now Prendick is completely screwed.
I had like a sinking feeling in my chest when I realized it was the boats. I was like, Montgomery, you dick. Like Montgomery did it on purpose in his drunkenness.
He did.
None escape.
Absolutely did.
None escape. We're going to make sure none escape and bust the boats. Like, what was he thinking? Well, I mean, in his drunkenness, what's he going to do? Why? Now you can't ever leave?
Montgomery had burnt the boats to revenge himself upon me and prevent our return to mankind. So, he's kind of alluded to it multiple times, but Montgomery has gone full beast. I mean, Montgomery likes the beast people. Montgomery is fully aware that he can't go back to London. He wistfully would like to, but whatever he did in his past, he knows he can't go back. And he's thrown his lot in with the beast people. And that was maybe not the wisest of choices that Montgomery could have made.
No. Because wouldn't they need to get supplies of some sort at some point? Or he's ready to go full beast?
He's going to go full beast. He's totally cutting himself off.
Because Moreau warned that the beast flesh grows back day by day. And Montgomery must know this because Prendick knows it.
Right.
And so you stay with the beast people long enough, they will be full beasts eventually without Moreau's tweaking at them constantly.
Right. So eventually he hears stuff that's going on. So Prendick rushes out. In his rush, he knocks over a lamp, unfortunately.
Ben pays no attention.
He finds Montgomery dead. Yeah, finds Montgomery dying. His knocking over the lamp burns down the enclosure, so now he has nowhere to live. So by the end of this chapter, no boats, no place to live. Montgomery's in quite a state. Or not Montgomery, Prendick.
Yeah, Montgomery is in quite
Montgomery's
a state.
dead. Yeah, Montgomery's dead.
I want to just take a step back and just mention some of the writing in this book, despite how like weird and creepy and gross and confusing it might be. Sometimes H.G. Wells has these really beautiful moments, and I think Montgomery's death is one of them. He says, "He was dead, and even as he died, a line of white heat, the limb of the sun, rose eastward beyond the projection of the bay, splashing its radiance across the sky and turning the dark sea into a weltering tumult of dazzling light. It fell like a glory upon his death-shrunken face." Does Montgomery deserve that? He doesn't really
I don't
seem...
think so.
It's like a hero's
But as the only
death
human,
here.
the only other person he's really kind of, even has a tenuous connection in for the past 2 months, the guy that did save his life, Prendick would be dead if not for Montgomery.
Might have been eaten.
Well, he would have just died at sea. I mean,
That's true. He was the last one in the boat.
When the captain picked him up,
But that's some beautiful
Montgomery
writing
saved him.
right there.
It is. It's very nice. He's got to turn of a phrase. Why, as we say, there's a reason why classic books are classic books.
We say it all the time.
Nobody's going to be reading Twilight in 100 years. All right. So that brings us to chapter 22. So now Prendick's on his own. So he has got to fully assert himself. So he does. He just starts whipping down with the whip, and
this is chapter 20.
20.
Yeah.
You're correct. Double X, 22, 20, 22. Roman numerals, right? So he starts telling him, hey, look, Sire, the law is dead. He broke the law. None escape. Don't break the law.
Trying to get them to bow to him.
Exactly. He enlists a couple of them to throw Montgomery into the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
And so then he's got to find somewhere to go.
Because
so
he knocked the lamp over and everything's burned down.
Burnt down the enclosure.
Burnt down everything, yeah.
But even though he's trying to assert dominance, he realizes the beast people know what's up.
Yeah.
They realize that the master can be killed, men can be killed. So they're like, no.
Yeah.
We don't have to listen to you.
Who are you that I should? As he tries to get one of them to bow down.
But he pulls his gun out and he's like, I still got a gun.
Yeah.
You know, he tries to shoot him.
Yeah.
So he does have one up on them. They probably can't pull the trigger on these revolvers.
Maybe the 5-man can.
The 5-man, maybe. He probably can't
shoot himself in the face.
Right. Not much dexterity. So he goes to the only shelter that's left on the island. He goes down to the beast village and basically begs for food.
Yeah. So I was thinking about this earlier. Prendick is, I don't know the right word for it, but he's not a hero. He's just like a dude. It's not like he suddenly was like some sort of survival expert and he figured it out, as heroes sometimes do in a book, or he was good with words and was able to convince them to follow him and he changed their ways and did something heroic. He doesn't. He tries feebly, snapping the whip and bow down, and then I want food. Almost apologetically, it says.
I mean, he is who he is. If we think back to the very beginning of the book, he's completely at the mercy of Montgomery and the ship captain. And then when they arrive at the island, he's laying on the ship deck, crying and begging, like, don't send me let me go to the island. Don't throw me into the ocean. Let me stay on the ship. Let me somebody.
Yeah.
He's completely at everyone's mercy in this story.
He's very realistic. He's just a poor guy.
He's just a guy. He's an English gentleman who just, for whatever reason, was out in the South Pacific.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And I like it better that way. I'm glad Prendick didn't become some sort of, the next sayer of the law or the next ruler of the beast people and whatever.
I think that's more 20th century heroic fiction. Whereas this is I don't want to see myself in Prendick, but this is a realistic portrayal of probably what would happen if I get stranded on an island. I'm going to die.
Could you feed me, please? I'm so hungry.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right. So he does that. He gets some fruit. He goes to the huts. He tries to barricade himself. He thinks, I'll hear it if someone comes in. But then in chapter 21, the reversion of the beast folk.
He gets lucky because, as we talked about, the beast flesh grows back and their beast nature overtakes them. Fortunately, Moreau had experimented on a dog, and this guy adopts Prendick. He's like, oh.
He wakes up and is
I'm yours now.
Licking his hand.
Yeah.
He's like, hopefully I'll hear someone come in. Nope. Literally, they could have eaten you, and you would have been asleep the whole time.
Yep. But I'm your slave now, master. So
he's it's a far cry from Buck in the Call of the Wild, but he is a Saint Bernard type dog.
Yeah, Buck would be like, "Screw you, dude! I'm out of here."
And they keep calling him. They're like, the master's dead. The other with the whip is dead. That other who walked into the sea is like us. And that's what everybody else thinks. So they kept his name, the other who walked into the sea.
The sea, right. But Prendick keeps the charade up. He keeps trying to convince him. He's not dead. Even now he watches us. The house of pain is gone. It will come again. The master you cannot see. Even now he listens among you. True, true, said the dog man.
And some of them are like, oh, maybe that's true. Maybe it's not. Most of them are unconvinced.
Yeah. All right. So he kind of sticks with that for a while. And this is where, so this started at about the 2-month point, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we know he's on the island for around a year. So this is like months that he's hanging out with these beast people.
Most of the time, which he doesn't want to tell us about. Like, he doesn't want to detail every little thing, but he does. He's got himself an arch nemesis in the hyena swine guy.
Right.
Which he's always in pursuit of. And the dog man is always with him, who also hates the hyena swine man.
So eventually, he goes back to the enclosure, right? I think he goes back to the enclosure, and he just spends hours hoping for a boat. And then he says, it was about September or October. I thought about making a raft. It's like, dude, you should have thought about that like day one.
Well, he's like, he has no knack for... He said he doesn't know how to build anything. Like, he's not crafty.
True.
He's not a woodworker. He doesn't even know how to start to build a raft. But eventually he's like, I better maybe try it, figure it out.
True. Yeah. Well, I mean, he had his arm. His arm heals up. His hands are working again.
Yeah, he did have a broken arm. So you have no idea how to build a raft, and you've got one arm.
Right. But luckily for him, we have Deus Ex Ipecacuanha? Ipicacuna? The raft just magically shows up at the island. It drifts in. He's got two skeletons.
Oh, the boat that... yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
one of them has red hair, so we're intimating that it's the Ipecacuanha, Ipicacuna, however it's said. I don't know.
I like Ipicacuna.
And the captain kind of got his. Yeah. So the red-haired captain, I guess, got his just desserts and died at sea. He wanted to throw Prendick out to the ocean, and there's some poetic justice in him dying adrift.
Because the raft that he was trying to build didn't work. Because
it wasn't working.
He built it way far away from the ocean, and I was like, "Ow, crap! I have to drag it to the ocean."
And it fell apart on the way, so it's like, well, I guess that's better than putting it in the water and falling apart there.
I feel like I would make a mistake like that. Like, I'm gonna build this thing; it'll be awesome, and then now it's 200 pounds, and I built it too far away from where I had to go.
I don't know that I would want to be on a raft. No. I don't know that I can build a raft, much less get it out onto the ocean.
And then spend how long on it?
Because it has to be right, because you have to have some way of provisioning yourself while you're out there.
Yeah.
So anyway.
The beast people are becoming more and more dangerous, and he realizes he's got to go. The flesh is growing back. They become less and less human, more and more beast-like. Whatever. He's just really got to go. The boat shows up.
Luckily.
What a wonderful day.
Yes.
Was it, what do you say, a little schooner, it's called?
Yeah, I don't know how big it was. It had a sail, at least, so it's at least big enough to have a sail on it. A dirty lug sail of a small boat.
Yeah.
So it's at least large enough that it has a sail on it.
So he collects fruit. He gets an empty keg. Because another one of his problems was like, how am I going to bring water with me?
Well, to illustrate the danger he's in, the first night that he's got the boat, he just kind of sleeps in it out in the bay because they're roaming the beach waiting for him. Yeah, basically. So he knows he's got to get out of here.
Yeah. And thank goodness it has a keg, and he can get. Where does he get water anyway? Does it mean? Oh, because there's a stream. That's right.
There's a stream.
That's where you saw him sucking their drink.
That's where they were drinking from. Exactly. So he kicks himself out to sea, and so now we come to 22, our final chapter. He's out there for a little while, and he finally does get picked up. He's been gone about a year. Nobody believes him when he talks about it.
I guess all they would have to do is go back to the island. It wouldn't be that hard.
You would think.
They'd be like, what'd you say?
Because he's only...
Go.
It was like 3 days he was picked up. He wasn't out there... He got lucky that he wasn't out there super long. Yeah, drifted for 3 days. Then they picked him up. So he couldn't be too far from the island. But so then he's back in society in London, and he finds he's got some pretty serious PTSD.
Yeah, he does. Back
in London. So he cannot even look at other people. He still fears the beast people. And I think this is, we can cover it more next week, kind of dig into this a little bit. But, this is really the crux, I think, of what Wells is trying to say with this book.
Yeah.
the nature of man versus beast.
He can't even look at them without seeing beast people. He can't be in public. He thinks, he's like, I know it's an illusion. I know that they are regular, perfectly reasonable humans, full of human desires and tender solicitude, emancipated from instinct and the slaves of no fantastic law. But yet, I want to stay away from them. Yeah,
so I think this will be a good talking point for next week when we do the wrap on this one, to kind of see what Wells was trying to say. But that kind of brings us to the end of The Island of Dr. Moreau. And I really enjoyed it personally.
Yeah. I did too.
I'm kind of curious to watch the movies now. I've just been sort of doing cursory searches, and apparently the 1996 movie kind of killed Val Kilmer's career.
What? Really? His career was so big before that.
I know, right? But apparently this movie took other people down with it as well.
Marlon Brando was in that.
Marlon Brando. I can't imagine Marlon Brando like chasing off after the puma in the evening.
Moreau. I guess that's the one we should watch. I don't know.
I bet I'd like to watch them both personally. I mean, Michael York is in the earlier one.
There's 2 or 3.
I think there's 2. Okay. I think there's 2. But yeah, Michael York's in the earlier ones. That should be at least good acting in that one.
I don't know Michael York.
Sure you do.
Do I?
Look him up. You know Michael.
Is he in It's a Wonderful Life?
No, he's British. He's British. So anyway, this you're probably anyway. So you've seen Austin Powers. Come on.
Oh, yeah.
Use a current reference.
It was just on the house the other day.
A current reference that's 25 years old. But
is
anyway,
he Basil?
Yeah.
Oh. Well, then I know Basil.
Well, there you go. See, then you know Michael York.
What does it all mean, Basil?
He's done lots of other things as well, but good actor. So that kind of wraps up The Island of Dr. Moreau. We will be back next week with our wrap of this book, some deeper discussion. So send us your thoughts. You can hit us up on all the socials at CYSTpod. We're on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can email us at cystpod@gmail.com. While you're surfing the internets, why don't you jump on over to Apple Podcasts, drop us a review, rate us and review us, tell us what you think, how you like what we're doing here. And next week after our wrap, we will reveal our next book. And if you thought H.G. Wells was a titan in the field of classic literature, well, wait till you see what we've got cooking up next week.
I want to hear some people's
going big.
I want to hear some people's big thinks on this book. I really do, especially of the nature of man. I'm excited to do the wrap episode and talk about some of these.
Yeah, this will be a deeper wrap, I think, than our first 2 books. So this has been Classics You Slept Through. Please vote for me for Homecoming Court. See you next week.